Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Moriarty, and I work at Comfort Zone here in Richmond with Lynne Hughes, who is here today. And we are here for a really special reason, a day of remembrance for not only Comfort Zone, but our whole Comfort Zone camp community, our community on Facebook, on all of our social media pages, and our nation, our whole nation. This is a really big day of remembrance. Of course, 9/11, such a pivotal moment in our country and a really pivotal moment with Comfort Zone. And I don't think a lot of people know the story of how Comfort Zone moved from being in Virginia to up north. And I think it's a really interesting story that Lynne has shared with me. And we really wanted to share it with everybody here today and take a look back and kind of go down memory road. So Lynne, do you want to just kind of jump in and take us back to tell us about Comfort Zone before 9/11. What did it look like?
Sure. Yeah. So Comfort Zone, we started in 1998, but we spent a year planning and getting camps up to speed. But our first camp was in 99, which, as you know, we celebrated our big 20th anniversary last year. And then we were 3 years old when 9/11 happened. But prior to that, we were still doing about 4 camps a year in the Richmond area. And we were serving Richmond kids. We had started bringing kids to us through travel scholarships to the Richmond area. But at that point, we weren't really sure that we could take the show on the road and replicate the magic elsewhere.
Yeah.
So we were pretty set on staying local.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously a big pivotal moment. We're not local anymore. We're all over the place. So in the time leading up to it, what was that deciding factor? Obviously 9/11 happened, but what was the deciding factor where you're like, okay, we have to go. We got to go up now.
Yeah, it's such an interesting story, and it gives me goosebumps to tell it. But so we were 3 years old, and in March of 2001, Comfort Zone got its first national media. We were in Parents Magazine, which was great. We were on newsstands for the full 30 days. And that really, nobody was doing what we were doing nationally. We were the first 501c3 bereavement camp. There were a few hospices that were serving their own community locally, but we were the first ones that formed as a 501c3. And nobody was doing what we were doing, so including in New York or New Jersey. So people were calling up and saying, will you come here? And as a result, we started those travel scholarships and we brought kids to us. We also had volunteers on their own dime that started coming to us to volunteer. One was named Gary Mason, and he was an attorney, and he had lost his sister at a young age. And he came to all our camps that spring and summer, and he kept saying, hey, there's nothing in New Jersey. If I raise money, will all you volunteers from Comfort Zone get on a bus and hold a camp in New Jersey?
Right.
And we were like, wow, we're just thinking Richmond, we hadn't thought that big. And so we tabled it, and we had board meetings the second Monday of every month. Mm-hmm. So from March on, the second Monday in April, May, June, July, August, we got to September. The last item on the agenda each month was New Jersey, what to do about New Jersey. And we tabled it once again on Monday, September 10th. So when we woke up to the horror of Tuesday, September 11th, I knew we needed to go. Yeah. At that point, we had a proven program. We were 3 years old, and we had the resources. We had trained volunteers and healing circle leaders here. Yeah. And I felt compelled, and that's really kind of almost how I dealt with the horror of 9/11, was pouring my energy into like, we've got to go. We've got to help these people.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure it wasn't easy. You don't just pick up and go. So how did you get up north?
It was crazy. So I also was pregnant. I think I was about 7 months pregnant with my daughter, Jamie. Yeah. I had a toddler. Evan was about 2.5. We were running Comfort Zone out of our house, but I was just on a mission. So we held an organizational meeting of volunteers who were interested locally. Yeah. And people wanted to respond. I mean, it was our nation's worst tragedy, and people felt helpless and compelled to respond. So we had a meeting and an information session for volunteers down here. And then we'll get to our special guest, Mitch and Jamie Dector, who were personal friends of ours and volunteers for Comfort Zone. Yeah. That we reached out to them to help us really, and also Gary Mason, who'd been nudging us. We really went to them to say, hey, help us go. Help us get there. So, but we got a lot of fun publicity. We started getting on national media, which helped us because we're in Richmond, but we wanted to go up to New Jersey, so we had to get people comfortable. And these families very hesitant. Who are you from Richmond, Virginia, going to help my child who just experienced a horrific tragedy?
Yeah.
Why would I turn my precious child over to you? So the fact that we weren't cutting our teeth on them, we were 3 years into it, we had that proven program and a track record, that helped a lot, but it took extra handholding, it took extra awareness. And we started with 1-day programs because people were not comfortable to make that leap to send their kids to a weekend program yet. So our first camp was November of 2001. And our thoughts were we wanted to get them some resources before they went into the holiday season.
Yeah.
They just were barely getting their footing under them, and then the holidays were upon them. So we went as early as November 2001, getting on a bus at like 5 a.m. From here, meeting at a parking lot in Richmond, traveling up to New Jersey, meeting up with our Jersey awesome volunteers who that was their first camp.
Yeah.
And it was just amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. At the end of the program, we always lighten it back up. So there's some social time, and we saw the magic happen, and I'm getting goosebumps, but a mom came up to me and she just sought me out and she said, "Thank you so much. This is the first time I've seen my child smile since the death of his father."
Yeah.
And to say that you put a smile on a child's face who experienced our nation's worst tragedy, it doesn't get any better.
Yeah, that stays with you. That stays with you forever. And I mean, I thought it was really interesting. You mentioned you kind of have to like build that trust up there. And I think a lot of people may think like, well, it's a big tragic event. Obviously the services are needed. But did you find it difficult to find the volunteers to get the information out to the kids? I mean, it was a different time. Right now we have Facebook and social media. It's so much easier to get the word out and tell people what Comfort Zone is and to get into their inbox. Did you find it hard to find those campers?
It was really hard. And we thought initially the numbers, they went from being like, 30,000 to 10,000. I mean, the numbers kept changing of the universe of how many people lost their lives that day.
Yeah.
Eventually it turned out to be close to 3,000. But we did letter campaigns. We worked with a PR agency locally.
Yeah.
We did word of mouth. We did Mitch and Jamie and our volunteers up there, spreading the word to their second cousins twice removed.
Yeah.
I mean, we reached out to schools, but it was like I remember not leaving my house for days, not showering, just like pouring everything into like, how do we get the word out?
Yeah.
And then once you got somebody who was interested, you still had to convince them and let them know this would be a positive thing.
Yeah.
And not re-traumatizing their child, but it would be a positive, and give them a community that gets it, and let them get back to being a kid again.
Yeah. And the community definitely started then, but I think it's built and it's grown so much since then. And yes, the reason Comfort Zone first went up north was for this terrible incident that happened in our country, but we've stayed up north. So do you want to talk a little bit about Comfort Zone now up north?
Sure. And some of the unique things about the camps, which kind of led to why we're still up there. So initially it was 9-11 kids only at each camp. And that was cool. They were a really tight community. We wound up serving about 330 kids, and they were able to repeat. And some of them, were telling their stories over and over again to the same people, but each time they told it, developmentally, they were at a different point. Mm-hmm. And then the story kept changing because the news kept changing, whether or not they had a funeral, whether or not there was any remains that were found, whether or not they got, a phone bill that showed that they tried to make a call home. So a lot of times pieces of the information that they had changed. Mm-hmm. And so these kids were reprocessing and trying to understand, put their heads around exactly, they putting the pieces together of a puzzle. So that was really unique, and nobody had experienced anything like this. So it was really, that community was really amazing and really tight, and the relationships formed between the buddies and the kids and even with each other was tight. But about 3 years into it, they started wondering, how did their loss compare to other kids?
Yeah.
And it was really because the campers themselves say, hey, we want to know, how other people, if it was a long-term illness and not a sudden illness, I mean, they wanted to know where their loss fit in. So we opened up the camps to any grieving child in that area.
Yeah.
And that is why, the camps are still up there today, and they are still sprinkled with now 9/11. A lot of our campers are big buddies, which is amazing.
It's amazing.
We have one on staff, just saying, feeling like a proud pop, proud mom. And so we're just glad that they're still up there, and we have ties to so many of those families. We hear from them today. And, it was a hallmark moment in our organization, making that decision to go up there. and certainly personally one of the most powerful and life-changing things I've ever done.
Yeah. And I think it made Comfort Zone just grow into this great and amazing thing. And what's out of tragedy, something Lynne says all the time, the something good from the something bad. And so out of this tragedy, Comfort Zone got this great publicity, and now we're able to go to the West Coast and go out to the, the middle of the country and serve more children. And so for me, I'm like, that's the something good that came out of it.
Yeah. So it gave us, to your point, gave us the confidence that we could take Comfort Zone and make it a traveling road show, and that we could change the volunteers and the cast of characters, and the magic would still happen. So it was a few years after we went up to New York and New Jersey that then we had a volunteer come to us and say, can you come, Bob Delaney, can you come to the West Coast?
Yeah.
And we did. And then we went to Massachusetts, and now to your point, we're all over the country. So, but it was really, if we had not gone, we might have always stayed locally and just brought kids to us. So it really did change the complexion of Comfort Zone.
Guys, we're live with Lynne here on Facebook. If you have a memory from one of our camps, from our 9/11 camps, or any Comfort Zone camp, really, leave it below in the comments. We'd love to read some of those and share those. And Lynne, I have a couple here I actually wanted to start with this one that we got from Jim Brady, who I love. We love Jim Brady. And Jim was at the very first camp up north after 9/11, right?
He was on the board at the time. He was a founding board member and a big buddy for many years. And coincidentally now he is on the board again. So he took the bus ride up. He did. Oh, dark ugly.
Yes, oh dark ugly on the bus. But Jim said, my biggest memory from that first 9/11 camp was the twin boys that you allowed to attend who were 6. And we usually don't have 6-year-olds. We start at 7, but we had 2 6-year-old twin boys. And when we did Healing Circle with the kids, doing a drawing with colors that were matched to feelings, one of the boys drew the towers and the sky with ground. When he explained it, OMG is what he had to say. He described how his dad saves people in the towers. So that's why the ground color was happy and the sky was sad because he missed his dad, and the towers were black because he was mad at Osama bin Laden. And that, I literally have.
That's a goosebump. And that's,
I literally have goosebumps.
Yes. And that's why it's so important. It was so powerful.
Yeah.
It was so humbling to be a part of that and to give those kids the time, by us giving up our time and giving those kids that space, the amazing healing. And they needed to express it in order to heal and to get back to being kids again too. So Comfort Zone does that blend of both. Yeah. And I'm always sometimes it's the youngest kids, sometimes that say the most profound things, like just like that, just having that, the ground is this because of this color and this is how I feel. And you don't expect that out of a 6-year-old. But I think Comfort Zone really gives them the space to process that and to come up with that and be able to share that with other people and grow. And that's what we say, share your story. It helps you grow a little bit every time. So goosebumps. Literally. And then Ginny on here said goosebumps too. We have some more goosebumps in the comments. We're feeling them.
Morgan Dector, thankful for CZZ every day. Today and every day. And then Sally Howell, I was transferred with my job from Richmond to Stamford, Connecticut, so I was able to volunteer in New Jersey after doing the camps in Virginia. So that was really cool. We had so many people who are from all over the place really wrap their arms around this big community up north. And they're like, many of us were like, oh, we're from Virginia. We're Virginians, right? But for so many people to see that this was something that was, it doesn't matter what your state line is, you're going to go up there and wrap your arms around these kids because they need it. That to me is something that was so great to see, so impactful.
More goosebumps. Yes, Sally. And Sally became, she was another one who helped us because she was a veteran big buddy. Yeah. Going up there and happened to get transferred up there. And we paired her up with Katie Lalama Piera. Now, they keep in touch today and have this beautiful relationship.
And Katie Lalama Piera, who we have absolutely claimed as our own, and is now one of my fabulous coworkers.
Yes.
We have Debbie here. I got involved through my daughter and son-in-law, and it had changed my life forever. The first time I volunteered, I couldn't imagine it being more emotional than it was. There I was at the 9/11 camp, and I couldn't understand how the world would ever be normal again for these kids. CZZ gave them a new normal. It was a lot like the feelings I have now. what will the new normal be? I miss these experiences so much and love that you're still doing this and putting those amazing smiles on these kids after such a terrible event happened in their lives.
Yeah, Debbie, thank you so much. Debbie was such another key volunteer up there. She used to give up her birthday all the time because she said this was more important than her birthday. But yeah, she was just a champion. And again, the New Yorkers in New Jersey, it was so personal. Yeah. And this happened in their backyard, and their landscape literally was forever changed. And they had the daily reminders. We would turn on the TV to see it down here, but they lived it. And so they were so proud and so wanting to be a part of their community's healing. Yeah. And Debbie was one of those. Yeah.
Well, I think we have some special folks who are joining us.
Yeah, so exciting.
So exciting. And so we're going to bring them in now. Do you want to introduce Mitch and Jamie?
Sure. So we had some volunteers from New Jersey coming down to Richmond beforehand. I mentioned Gary Mason. Two other ones were Jamie and Mitch Decter. They are very special to me personally. When I was a camp counselor and in college, Jamie was my favorite camper. I had her for 3 summers, and my daughter Jamie is named after her. Just saying, you know, she left a mark on my heart. And we lost touch for a while, and then Jamie tracked me down because, again, pre-internet, Facebook and all that. But she found me, wrote me a letter, and I told her about doing camps. And so she and her then boyfriend Mitch came down to our May camp, got hooked, and were excited to get involved. And then when the horror of September 11th happened a few months later, they were amongst the first phone calls because they were there on the ground. We knew them. They loved camp. They had already experienced magic, and the call was like, you know, how do we get started? So I don't know, Mitch and Jamie, welcome. They're still involved today. Mitch is on our board. Jamie, not everybody knows, your very first employee in Comfort Zone. Claim to fame there.
Your memories.
So, welcome, you guys. 2 of my favorite people.
Hi, guys. How are you?
So do you guys remember getting a call from me and saying, hey, we want to come, or you know, take us back to like when and you guys lived it. So, you know, your experience of it, and then, you know, turning that horror of what's happening in your backyard into help.
Yeah, I mean, can you hear me? You guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I absolutely remember, I mean, obviously I remember the day vividly. And I remember Mitch and I definitely talking about what Comfort Zone would do for those children that lost, you know, a parent that day. And then when the call came, it was a no-brainer. It had to be done. And it was something that you already knew the skills and how to do it. This was obviously a new situation that nobody really was, you know, tasked to handle. But I think we were both very excited about the possibility of sharing the Comfort Zone love with these children. Obviously very nervous the first day that I think we did only a day camp the first time. You know, what was going to go on and how those children were going to feel. But to take a sentence out of Lynne, it was like turbo bonding. These children never met anybody else. You know, they've heard them in the news and they weren't out there, but they met another 8-year-old that went through the exact almost same thing as they did, and they bonded instantly. And then we went on to do the weekend long camps. And honestly, I think the camp, I didn't have a loss that day, but I think it saved me and the volunteers, and being able to watch these children process it, you know, helped me to process it. So I think it's twofold. It helped these children and the volunteers.
Yeah, well said. I remember you got a bunch of candy donated from Nestle, and we sugared them up all at the end. Nestle. And Mitch, how about you? Do you remember finding out we were you know, wanting to come and asking for your help? And
absolutely. I remember it being so raw, and we were so vulnerable as a country, and nobody knew sort of how we were supposed to feel and what was happening in this sort of new world we were living in. And then I remember, you know, during our first weekend long camp, there was this sense of togetherness and compassion that we were all just yearning for. And I remember these small kids walking in and feeling so sad for them. But that immediately changed when you realized that they had such a different outlook about the day, and it wasn't about terrorism. It wasn't about, the awful people that were behind this attack. It was about their loss. It was about missing somebody, that was taken away from them. And it shifted my focus on what 9/11 was, because for me, it became about these families. And that was such a great thing to focus in on, as opposed to the negative and all of the scariness that was happening, when we were learning what terrorism meant. It was not something we had really thought about prior to 9/11. So for me, it was just a way to connect with these families in such a unique way, that just, and I still remember it so vividly. I can still see their faces, and it helped, me understand what was happening in our world. It helped me grieve, but as I said, most importantly, it just put this positive spin on something so negative. And that was one of the biggest the early takeaways for me.
Yeah, you say that you're taking me back into the immersion, and I can remember so vividly looking around the camp and thinking, none of these kids should be here. None of them should be here. None of them should have experienced a loss. And then, compartmentalizing that or coexisting with that excitement of seeing them get back to being kids, or making memories or sharing their story. And so, and being so glad. You're so sad that they're there, but so glad that we created a place for them. So, do any kids stand out, or any certain memories from healing circles?
I mean, I'll let Mitch.
That's a tip. Put the ball in the tee.
I know Mitch has a kid that stands out.
Yeah, so my first little buddy at the 9/11 camps was Tyler Gurian, who was 7 years old at the time, and sadly his father was at a meeting that day, I remember just this little blonde-haired kid, full of energy, only wanting to play hockey. Very, mature, outspoken, wise beyond his years, and immediately sort of took control of our healing circle and was the first one to raise his hand and to speak about the things he was feeling. I remember meeting Tyler's mom, Susan, and his little sister, Eva, who was 4. And I just remember feeling a connection to this family, and a connection to Doug, their father, who I had obviously never met. And I just felt compelled to be a part of Tyler's life. And fortunately, I was able to do that for many years, watched him grow up. We would see each other beyond camp. But we would go back to camp every year, and he continued to be my little buddy. And this really nice friendship just blossomed from the first experience. And as people probably read, Tyler and I last year volunteered as big buddies together, which was totally full circle. Watching him chase around some energetic little kid, while I wanted to go back to the bunk and take a rest. But that was just it's been amazing to be a small part of the Gurian family, and to be a part of their grieving process, and just to watch Tyler and Eva grow up into the people that they are. I have no doubt that Comfort Zone played a pivotal role in who they are today. And I love the fact that they're still involved, that they still are, want to give back and are a part of the organization. And it just goes to show you how important and how meaningful Comfort Zone is to all families that are involved, not just 9/11 families, but in particular the 9/11 families, because it was just a way in which they could come together in our safe bubble that they didn't have elsewhere. And I remember a lot of the kids coming and saying when they went back to school, they were immediately pegged as the 9/11 kid, or the kid who lost their mom or dad in the Twin Towers. And they all loved that they would come to camp, and they weren't that kid. They were just a camper. They were just amongst their peers. and connected in a way to the other kids that they didn't have in the classroom or other places. And that's what's, so special about Comfort Zone.
Well, Mitch and Anna, you mentioned you and Tyler have kept in touch over the years, but you even took him to, you take your child to work day one time, didn't you? Before you had kids?
I did. Yeah. I mean, I was 25 when I met Tyler. And somehow I'm only 29 now. So figure out. Yeah, no, he was, I did look at him in a way I felt, like I had kind of this responsibility to take him in under my wing. And we did a lot of things, that I'm sure that he would have preferred to have done with his dad. But we would go to hockey games, and he did come to work with me, and he would call me out of the blue, and it was fun. It was a really fun friendship. We would, just go to the park, and I really tried to make an effort to see him, at least once a month, and we were able to do it for a long time, which was pretty cool. And it was fun even as he got older, that he still wanted to hang out with me, and as he got into high school and stuff, we used to joke around about he'd be picking me up one day in his car, and it's pretty amazing to now see what a great person he's become.
So take us back in the nitty gritty. We talked about it. It didn't just happen, like us getting up there and making camps materialize. And you both were so instrumental on finding facilities, recruiting campers, helping to fundraise. Talk about how the experience of that, and some of the people that you brought in, and maybe if you guys reflect, or what their reflections are. You guys got all immersed. You were all in.
I think that my memory's not as great as yours, but we just employed every family member and friend that we had, and I think sometimes Mitch and I look at each other and say, we keep asking our friends to do stuff, but and to get involved, but this we truly believed there was no question. And anybody that, if you helped raise funds, if you volunteered, I was just a floater for a while and not a big buddy, even just being there and experiencing it just gives you such a different outlook on life and what these children have been through, and how they are survivors and how they can do it. As innocent as, the fuzzy ball that I don't remember what they held, and how much that fuzzy ball meant to them, and what, comfort it gave to them. So innocently, certain things like that. We were in the city a lot after a while, trying to get out the word about Comfort Zone. There wasn't social media back then, so we did a lot of information sessions with the firefighters group and the first aid groups, and tried to connect with all of the businesses that were in the Twin Towers, and get the word out to know that that we were here and can help. And I think everybody just band together, and that's, you wanted to do something, and you felt so helpless at that day. Like, what can I do to help besides sit here and watch this on the news? And I think both Mitch and I and all of our family and friends, and I'm so thankful for all of them, just wanted to help and did.
It was an easy pitch for people in the New York, New Jersey area, because of how close we all were to what had happened. But when we recruited our friends to come volunteer, it was easy. It was, let's go do this together. It's going to be fun. We all love camp, and it's going to be really important to these children. And then in terms of fundraising and donors, again, the pitch was easy. It was, these kids need us. Comfort Zone needs the funds in order to be able to do this. We want to do this as frequently as we possibly can, but in order to do that, we need the funding. So the pitch was easy, and we had this commitment, that we were going to be there for these families for as long as they needed us to be. And kudos to the organization and everyone involved that 19 years later, we're still doing what we intended on doing. We're doing it, throughout the country. And how about the fact that we now have, one of the Comfort Zone, little buddies who lost her father on 9/11, now working for the organization. And I love when I go to camp and, and these now big buddies stand up and say, I was a little buddy. I was there after 9/11. That to me speaks volumes about the importance of what Comfort Zone does. And it's so cool that 19 years later you still see those familiar faces, and it brings you back to that time. I mean, you think about other volunteers and meeting people for the first time, and now 19 years later, we're still close, we're still friends. I think about California Tom and Ed the Dude and all these people who were strangers to me back in 2001, and now it's crazy to think it's been 19 years, but we share a unique bond by having immersed ourselves in this. And I love talking about Comfort Zone, and I love thinking back of those memories. And it's great to think back in a positive way. And as sad of a day as today is, I do have a smile on my face when I think about all the incredible people that I met as a result of Comfort Zone.
Yeah, I think that we gave them a face. I mean, you guys both talked about that. We gave, it wasn't just a horrible story. It was like giving them a face. And now it's like looking back on people we've had 19 years with, to see them grow and become lovely adults. Go ahead, Jamie.
I was saying, I try and teach my children right now with what's going on that there are silver linings, the family time we're spending, and there's certain things that every once in a while, I'm sure they're not appreciating it, but I'll just say silver lining, and I think that Comfort Zone was our silver lining. As Mitch said, those volunteers, you saw the good in people. You can't be a bad person if you're going to want to help grieving children and volunteer at that camp. So all the volunteers, and we can go on with names, but you just see the good in people, and it was needed for what 9/11 was.
Well, you're making my heart smile, both of you. So just want to thank Mitch and Jamie Dector both for joining us and for their wonderful contribution. I mean, 19 years later, we're still there. And that is in large part to you guys and your efforts, and your second cousins twice removed, and everybody in between who got involved. So big thanks from the Comfort Zone family. We love you guys, and just really grateful for you.
Thank you to you, because without you and Kelly, this wouldn't have happened. So I'm blessed to have met you when I was, how old? 10? 9. Okay, thanks.
Jamie, before you go, I gotta let you know that Jamie Hughes had left a little comment on our feed, and she said, Mitch and Jamie are the best. All exclamation points.
She has to say that. Right. She has my name. She has to say that.
Yeah, got greatness in her.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in the name.
Thanks, guys.
And if Evan Hughes is listening, go Jets.
Yeah, we got a Jets fan out of it.
Take care, guys.
Thanks so much, you guys.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks. Bye. That was awesome.
We'll have to get Mitch and Tyler one time on together. Maybe,
yes.
Maybe next year.
I love it. I did want to share, we had Miss Paisior left us a comment on Facebook, and I wanted to share a memory that she shared with us as well. There's been so much love and support for myself and for my sons. It is amazing how people can pull together in times of tragedy. My hope is that people will continue to remember how important it is to come together and be kind. And that, I mean, when I read that, I was like, again, goosebumps. But then when you explain what you're wearing today, I can get it. It'd be great if you could show that.
I don't know if this can.
Yeah, you can kind of see.
You see? So, Terry Paisior is a camper mom, and her 2 kids, Joe and Robbie, came to a lot of camps, and we loved on them, but they gave up. Her husband worked in the Pentagon, and was actually, lost his life in the Pentagon in the strikes there. And they had these awesome bracelets, remembrance bracelets. So mine says Joseph John Paisior Jr., United States Navy. So I've had it all these years. I've had it about 19 years, and I've worn it to a lot of camps, and I keep it in a special place, and just makes my heart smile. I feel honored. It was an honor and a privilege to help these families, and including the Paisiors, and this remembrance just makes, I'm so happy to have gotten to know them, and love the fact that Robbie's still involved today. He's been a big buddy a gazillion trillion times. He's amazing. He's been a healing circle leader. He's gotten his wife involved, Kelsey. So we love the Paisiors. Just so happy that you're still along a part of the family. And thank you again for this bracelet. I treasure it.
Yeah. And it really goes back to that. I mean, 20 years later, I mean, the family, it's still there. We talk about the bubble and the CZZ community and how it is a family. And I think having that bracelet is it's a symbol of the family and how it just continues on every single day. And another indication of our family is the family members that we've had become campers to big buddies and employees. We have the fabulous Miss Katie Lalama Piera.
Yes.
Who is going to join us in here in just a couple of minutes. So, Lynn, tell me when you first met Katie.
Gosh, I remember her at the first camp. I mean,
Yeah.
She was at the day camp. I believe she was like at every weekend camp. She and her older sister Trish, but Katie is just sunshine.
Yes.
She just is sunshine. Hopefully we'll get her to laugh, because as a kid, she just had the best sense of humor, and she would giggle. She would get lost in her giggle, and she'd say something and just like, or somebody else would say, and she would just like get the giggles and just kind of like light up the room around her. And she walked around with a smile. I mean, she was all about camp, being there, and owned it. And like I said, I just remember you as sunshine.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. Hi, guys.
Hi. Katie even came down then to, not only did she do the 9/11 camps, and then when they opened up to all New Jersey and New York kids, but she even came to camp in Virginia, came to some of our week-long camps. So, and then became a junior counselor and big buddy, and never has not been involved since she came to camp. How old are you? Were you like 7 at the first camp?
I was 7. I had just turned 7 that August of 2001, and I remember going to camp for the first time. I just thought it was so fun. I was always the type of kid who loved to just like be in the moment and always like be happy with whatever was happening, and like just jump right in and get involved. I was never shy. Everybody knows that. So
Yeah.
Hey, we're glad for that.
We love it.
I'm never afraid to like be embarrassed or like jump in and do something goofy. That's just the type of person I am. A lot of people over years would say I'm more of like an obnoxious person, but it's not obnoxious. It's just I'm outgoing and I'm fun and I like to have a good
You're all in.
You're amazing.
I am just all in. I don't do anything. I always do everything full, never half. It's always full energy. So
One camp was on Halloween, and we let kids dress up in their and I remember you in a clown costume.
yes, I do remember. I do actually remember that camp. I thought it was so cool that like we all got to wear costumes to camp. I was like, this is fun. Also, it was just like, we're also in a campsite in the middle of October. It's dark out, and it's like you just kind of get flashbacks thinking it's going to be like a scary movie a little bit, but it's not. So
Well, take us back. So did you want to go, or did you come under bribery? I mean, do you even remember?
honestly, I had gone to the day camps.
Yeah.
So I really, it was one of those things like I went with my mom and my sister, she brought us, and then I remember getting like a duffel bag, and then it was like we signed up for the like weekend camp, and I remember my mom dropping us off. Whether I was like upset or like scared, I don't really remember. But all I know is I didn't want to leave. That's what I do remember. I remember my mom picking us up, and I didn't want to leave because I had such a good time. And I remember my big buddy, her name was Tracy. She was my first big buddy. She came up from Virginia.
Right.
I came home and I kept my photo just on my wall right next to my bed for months and a long time after camp, because I was just like, okay, when's the next one? When's the next one? But I was just I was like, whether I was nervous or upset, I don't think so. But I know I was really like, oh, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go home. This was amazing.
I love it.
Katie, tell us about your dad. I mean, tell us if you want to talk about that day, but tell us about your dad. I know he was a big personality too, and
Yeah.
looked just like him.
You do.
I know, I do. When you look at all of us together, me and my sisters, it's like we look nothing alike in general. They're all my mom, and then it's just me, and I look just like my dad, like spitting image. So, no, my dad, he was a great person. Just kind and always wanted to help people, always, and family was really important to him. He always went to every event. It didn't matter when it was, where it was, or who it was for. He always wanted to support everybody, his kids, including all of his nieces and nephews. My dad was born in Italy and then came here when he was 8. But he was just a very proud person. He loved this country, loved his home country of Italy as well. but he loved it here and was so ready to be immersed in like the American culture, but still holding on to the traditions that he had. And I just like remember, I would go to work with him a lot, like a lot. I used to love going with him into the city. I used to like enjoy, like, I would think it's so cool to be on a bus or a subway. I just found it fascinating. And I would just like bring a little bag and I would literally just sit under his desk like majority of the day while he worked. And then like if he was in a meeting, I would like hang out with some of his coworkers. And he had this one coworker named Joaquin. And he always used to like play pranks on one of their other coworkers. He had like one of those like Be Happy singing basses in his office. And I remember he had like a little laser pointer, and I feel like he got the laser right at the point of like the fish, it would like go off. So anytime like my dad would go to a meeting, I would hang out with him, and he would come back and he would just like be laughing because he knows we were doing something like funny or like playing a prank on somebody. I would just like love being at work with him because I would just be fascinated at everything around me, like what he did. And my dad was an engineer for the Port Authority. So I just thought it was so cool. He would work on, he worked in like the tunnels, bridges, and terminals department of the Port Authority. So he would do a lot of work on those things. And I always thought it was so fascinating. And I remember he always told me like, when you're older, I'll bring you to the top of the George Washington Bridge. And I actually, there's like a picture and you have him like all the way, like walking all the way up to the top, like just like carabiner on to the side, wires and cords. And I show people that picture like, oh my gosh, that must be so scary. And I'm like, I don't know if he was ever scared, but he just loved it. He loved his job, enjoyed it. But yeah, I remember like even sometimes at night he would get calls and he'd be like, oh, I gotta go. Or like, just like stuff like that. He had like a carpool with a lot of his coworkers. So like in the mornings, a lot of them would show up to our house and like leave. So I remember a lot about his job and how much it was important to him, but also being home with us was also important.
Katie, take us through the story. I mean, where was he? How did your family learn about it?
Yeah, it's funny because I was so young, so I feel like as years went by, like I kind of forgot a lot of things. But as I got older, I started feeling more comfortable to ask family more and to like find out more. But I remember I went to school that morning. I went to a local Catholic school in our town, and both my sisters were in high school. My oldest sister, Marianne, was a senior, and my next older sister, Trish, was a freshman in high school. So I went to school. This was my first year without one of my siblings at the grammar school we were at. So I was like a little nervous but excited. And I got dropped off. And my mom at the time had gone back to work, and she used to work at a daycare center nearby. And so she dropped me off to school, and then she went to work. And then I remember not that long into the school day, my next door neighbor came and picked me up from school with her daughter. We were the same age. And she's like, oh, we're going to go home. And I was like, oh, okay. So she grabbed all my stuff. We went home. And I just remember coming home and there were so many people. My dad was one of 7 kids, like all together. So I just remember all of our family being there, neighbors, friends, just a constant like revolving door of people coming in and out. But my mom had a lot of her friends bring like her children over so that it would kind of distract me a little bit. I thought it was like any other day. My mom had told me that that morning she was driving to work and she heard it on the radio. So she's like panicking, rushing to get to her job so like she can get to a phone because she had no cell phone. And she had walked into work, and all the other women that she worked with, they were like, Linda, Frank already called a bunch of times. He left messages, and then she left and went home. And she had spoke to him that morning multiple times. He also spoke to one of his siblings who also lived in the city. And pretty much they were there, and he was like, we can't leave yet. We're still waiting to find out what's happening. And a lot of the people there they were so sure that the structural integrity of the buildings would be able to withstand something like that. And he had spoke to her multiple times, and then pretty much then she was watching the news and the towers collapsed, and that was pretty much it. And then she sat by the phone just waiting for a call. But she always told me that she felt like in her heart that she knew he was gone, but didn't fully want to believe it. And after that, eventually when she sat down and told me, I was just so angry. I was upset, but I was more angry because I was just like, I don't understand. Like, what do you mean he's not going to come home? What does all this mean? And in the meantime, while all this is happening, my mom's also, she's waiting to find out if they're going to find him or all this stuff. But in the meantime, she's going all over the place, going to all of his coworkers' funerals and going to be with their families and running around trying to find out everything she possibly can. And I would be like with a lot of different family friends of ours. They would kind of watch me while she would do all that. And then eventually we had a memorial service in that October. But eventually they did find his remains and we ended up having a reburial. But yeah, and as far as like where he was last seen, there was like a coworker of his who was one of the few that survived that day. And pretty much he was able to like report that he was last seen on the 22nd floor of the North Tower. He was working on the 64th floor. So he was below impact. And the North Tower was the first one hit, but the last one to fall. So he was below impact, but he was last seen on the 22nd floor. What was more hard about it was that, my dad was always the type of person who always wanted to help people and put others first before himself. And he had actually gone back to make sure that everybody that he was with on his floor had gotten out and was trying to get out. And some of what he had told people is that it's quoted that he said, "Go ahead and I'll follow." So I like to think that some of his last moments were doing what he always wanted to do, is just to make sure to care for people and take care of them and make sure everybody else was okay.
Well, that's quite a story, but what a legacy.
Yeah.
So then, like, what was it like? How did your family change afterwards, and where does comfort zone come in?
Well, family dynamics, very different. My sisters were older, so they grieved a little bit differently. So I really didn't feel like I could like talk with them. I also didn't really talk to my mom about a lot of it because I was scared because I didn't want to upset her.
Sure.
But unfortunately, because of my dad's death, we did have a lot of like family breakoffs and disconnections, which it's very sad. I always often wonder what things would be like if he were still around and things, but at the end of the day, I just have to remind myself that there's a reason why people are in your life and there's a reason why some people aren't. So, my dad, like I said, my dad was one of 7, and we had a very large like Italian family, so we spent a lot of time together. So when that changed, and I realized what was happening, it was very upsetting. I struggled with it for a very long time, but then eventually I just was kind of like, you know what, sometimes things happen for a reason, and there's nothing I can do to change it, that I'm here, and it's their loss if they don't want to get to know me, and their loss if they don't want to spend time with me.
Yes, absolutely. So you wind up going to camp.
Yeah.
And how does that help you navigate?
I think going to camp kind of, made me realize that I wasn't alone. I knew that my whole family was grieving in general, but it was just different because we were different ages. We grieved differently. I didn't feel like, yes, we lost the same person, but my relationship with my dad is different than my sister's relationship with him. And I remember going back to school, and I felt like everybody was just watching me and like waiting for me to like what's going to be her next move? Like, what is she going to do? Is she going to cry? Is she going to do this, do that? So when I went to camp and I realized that there was all these other kids just like me, I felt like I could just be myself. I felt like I didn't have to worry about what my next emotion was going to be or worry what people were thinking about me. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, you were 7. Like, do you really think that people were staring at you? I'm like, yes, you feel like you're in a fishbowl.
Yeah.
We're living in a small town. Everybody knew who everybody was. We were very active at our church. We were very active, like in the Catholic school I went to, and it was already a small school in general. So everybody kind of knew my dad and knew our family. So I just felt like they were all just staring at me all the time. And it was awkward because I just felt like I didn't know what to do. So when camp came into my life and I got to go somewhere for a weekend and didn't have to see everybody I was seeing every day and just get to be with other kids that were like me and be around people who wanted to be there to support us, it was the best thing in the world. And honestly, I think that's what kept me going to camp, was knowing that I was always going to have that community that could always support me, understand me, and not judge me.
Making my heart smile, girl. So talk about where you are today.
Well, I guess, like, reflecting, it's already been 19 years, which is just weird to me. This morning I went to, our town has always done a memorial service every year. There was 3 people who passed away from our town, and they always do something every year. And I moved to North Carolina 3 years ago, so I haven't actually been to that memorial in a few years. So I was there today, and I saw my old high school teacher, and he came up to me and he's like, "Oh, who is this?" Because I had my daughter in her stroller. And I was like, "Oh, this is Francesca." He's like, "You have a kid?" I'm like, "I do." Like, he's like, "I can't believe, like, it's been this long since we've seen each other." But he's like, "You're like so grown up now." And just asking me how I was doing. But where I'm at now, 19 years later, I started off as like a little 7-year-old kid just grieving the loss of her dad and trying to navigate, you know, my childhood. And then, going into my teenage years, going into high school, kind of figuring out, okay, well, what do I want to do with my life? Where do I want to go? And going to college, and then getting married, having a baby. So I lay claim to being a wife and a mom. It's very important to me. I'm so happy with the life I lead. I'm very blessed to have my family. And now I get to work for camp, which is honestly the ultimate dream. I remember being a kid and just being mesmerized by like you and Kelly, Lynn, and watching Kelly facilitate camp weekends and jumping up and down and just having all this energy. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I enjoy all these things. This would be amazing to do one day. In college, I was going to be a teacher, and I shortly realized in my senior year, my last fall semester, I don't think I want to do that anymore. And I had already had all this experience with nonprofits, now volunteering for Comfort Zone and realizing what goes into all that and other organizations. I was like, you know what, I wonder if I can make a career out of it. And I'm so grateful that I made that change. I started working at a charity in New Jersey, and then we moved to North Carolina, and I was working for somewhere else. And then, Lynn, when you reached out to me, we talked. I literally said I would drop anything and anything just to work for Comfort Zone because it means so much to me. I don't really think I would be the person I am today with my loss and the way I view the world and being as resilient as I am if I didn't have Comfort Zone's guidance and their presence in my life. And I think that to you, Lynn, and to Kelly, because without you guys, that would have never happened. And I don't think I would ever be the person I am today without it.
Well, just giving me all the feels, but you are your father's child. You are thinking of others all the time. And the fact that you are all things Comfort Zone and the best of it, and now you're paying it forward so that your light and your healing and your resilience can encourage other kids in their grief journey. It doesn't get any better than that for me personally, or for Comfort Zone as an organization. So all right, Katie, what do you have over there?
Oh,
top that, Katie.
I'm done. You can't top that.
No, we got some good goosebumps on top of goosebumps.
No. I just, as you're saying, I'm listening to Katie describe her dad. I'm like, Katie's describing herself right now, which is just, it's a testament to your dad and the person that you are. I mean, we're so lucky to work with you, Katie. I mean, I can't even say, but
I'm so lucky to work with you guys.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I think just the journey that you had from being a camper and then a big buddy and now being on staff and how you got here, my heart is just so full. And if you have a chance later, please go back and look at all the comments on this Facebook Live.
I will.
You're getting a lot of love, and people are really, thank you for sharing your story, because we say, it's a safe risk, but it's a risk. You got to share when you're sharing a piece of yourself right there. And the fact that you just did that on a Facebook Live.
We're sending you a virtual pin.
Yeah. I wish I had my pins on me, because I'd be throwing them at you right now.
After all the years of, it's been 19 years now since my dad passed away, and I've been involved with Comfort Zone for like 19 of those years. My bad. Yeah. So it's been 19 years. I've also been involved with camp, and, my biggest advice whenever I've been a big buddy and I've had little buddies that maybe have been a little too nervous to share, I always say it's no big, like, you don't have to share. Everything's a challenge by choice with Comfort Zone. But I feel that even if you share just a little piece of your story, just a little bit every time, it's all going to come back cohesively together to where you're going to be able to share your story without a blink of an eye. And it's okay to be emotional, and it's okay to laugh at certain parts and to tear up at certain parts. Sharing my story now, I feel like it's such a breeze because I've done it so much now. But I also feel that every time I share my story, I almost share a new piece of my story because I think, oh my gosh, like this just dawned on me. And this week being with my mom and everything, we've just been talking a lot about my dad, and like she started sharing new things about like what had happened, and her take on it that started making me think, oh my gosh, like yeah, I do remember that. Because the hardest thing that I deal with now is as I get older, I find that I'm having a harder time to remember a lot, from being so young. So anytime I get new information, I always make sure to try to throw it in my story somewhere, because in this way I have it all there, and every time I share my story, I know it's going to come out at some point, so I won't ever forget it.
Well, that's beautifully said. And it's so important to tell your story and have it not be on a shelf and not ever go to that place, but to have it be a part of your DNA,
Yeah.
of who you are. And he lives on every time you tell your story, as well as, and you alluded to this, every time you tell your story, you heal a little bit.
Yeah.
And somebody else heals a little bit because you're going to validate somebody else's loss or whatever they're thinking or feeling. So, yeah, it just makes you stronger. And it's all part of that resilience that you embody so well.
Thank you. And what I feel like what was so important for the kids who attended the 9/11 camps, I think with a tragedy like this, it becomes hard for you to like grieve your own loss while also cohesively grieving with everybody else, because everybody lost something that day, whether it was a person or a part of themselves or their career or a loved one or their fear of maybe never wanting to travel again. Everybody lost something that day. So you're now struggling with dealing with your own loss, but also dealing with the loss that the whole country is grieving together. And eventually I kind of learned that, at the end of the day, my dad's my dad. Yes, he did die on September 11th, but that's not going to be his identifier. His identifier was he was a dad, he was a husband, a brother, and he was a friend to many people, a coworker. And I just try to remember that part as often as I can, so that it's always going to be tied to 9/11. But if I can just, separate the two for just a little bit, and everybody remembers to just grieve their loved one, but you can also grieve 9/11 at the same time. That's what kind of makes it so special for all those kids that came to camp, because I think they kind of learned that you can just grieve your loved one without having to grieve everything else going on in the world.
You summarized that so beautifully. And that was such a common struggle, because that it was hard to personalize it, because people were like talking about their own grief of their safety net and, terrorism and, whatever their own thoughts were. But to make it, to personalize it was such a struggle. And you've done it so beautifully and you explained it so well. And it's a process on how to get there. And you've just done a really good job with it.
Thank you. Well, like I said, who I am, I owe who I am to Comfort Zone, because you guys showed me, that it's okay and I'm not alone, and my emotions can be my emotions, and that I could be angry, but I didn't have to always be angry.
This is like a little out of the box thinking, but when you think about the pandemic, there are some similarities. There's certainly a lot of differences, but what are some of the similarities or differences, or how does it feel in comparison?
I would say, like, looking at it, I don't know personally people, but like, just people that you're acquaintances with over the years, like through social media, I've seen that they've posted that they've lost somebody due to COVID. And it makes me really sad, because I feel like it's going to be similar to 9/11, where they're all going to be lumped in together, and it's going to be hard to grieve your own loss, because you're also now dealing with everybody else's life grief along with COVID. Like, oh, I can't have this party, and I'm working from home, and my kids aren't able to go back to school. And then you have the people on the side that are thinking, okay, well, I lost somebody to COVID. That's my struggle. My struggle may not it seems a little bit worse than yours. And there'll be a lot of comparison, a lot of like, oh, well, what if, and this or that. And I just hope that people will be able to, just come together at the end of the day and realize that this pandemic has caused a lot of grief for everybody, in all aspects, whether life or a personal loss due to it. And I just hope that one day we can all, come together and beat this thing, and everybody can grieve on their own.
Well said.
Very well said. And I love what you said, taking that moment to grieve your own loss. I think that's really important. And it relates, I think, to today as well. Yes. Thank you so much, Katie,
Well,
for
thank
coming
you
on.
guys.
Yeah, and thank you, and enjoy. I know you're up in New Jersey right now, right?
Yes.
So I hope you are getting to enjoy your time up there. And with
I definitely am. It's been a long time coming, so I'm happy that we were able to get up here, and I'm also just happy I was able to be here during this time to be able to spend time with my family.
So powerful. Well, you are awesome. We love you and look forward to working with you. We'll catch you, on Monday or something.
Yeah.
We'll go back to work stuff. But
I'll just
today,
see you on
our
Monday's
hearts are
Zoom
with
call.
you. We love you. You're amazing.
I love you guys, and
Thanks
thank
for
you.
sharing your heart. Bye, Katie.
Bye.
she is wise beyond her years. It's crazy. I really do. When she said about grieving your own loss, I think it's so important. And those kids, 9/11, I think that is great that they were able to have a community where, yes, they're all there together for one reason, and then they probably had a very similar story, but they learned that they were able to grieve that individually as well. And Katie really summed that up beautifully.
She really did. And she touched on there were a lot of unique nuances. Everybody's loss is unique, but there were a lot of nuances for 9/11 from, did you get the call home? There were multiple funerals. Sometimes they'd have a funeral because they didn't have a body, and then they would get remains after that and have a second funeral, which Katie alluded to happened to her family, trying to piece together those pieces of where were they, or again, the calls home, and then falling out sometimes with family members was really sad, but really common. And then the kids experiencing feeling like that they were grieving in a fishbowl, that they were the 9/11 kids. And so, Katie navigated and explained all that really, really beautifully. And it wasn't easy and it took time, but she didn't give up and she kept at it. And now, she's a mom, a wife, an awesome coworker. She's done the work.
And I think she embodies resilience.
She embodies resilience. It's so important.
Resilience. And a lot of our campers embody resilience, I think.
Yes, it's easy when something unfair happens to you. Mm-hmm. You're at a crossroads of something unfair happened to you. And are you going to get stuck, or are you going to move forward? Is this unfair thing going to define you, or are you going to find meaning from it and be happy anyways, despite this unfair thing?
Yeah.
And when you make that choice to move forward and be happy, any intentional happiness, work for your happiness, it can happen and you can heal. And Katie, again, she just embodied all that, and that's resilience.
Resilience, for sure. Well, we've had so many fantastic people sharing memories. I wish I could read them all, but just a lot of love, which I think is something that we all need to just embody and keep in ourselves today. Just a lot of love and acceptance and listening to each other. A lot of people are saying, they listened and thanking Katie for sharing her story, because like we said, it's not easy, but once you do it, it gets a little bit easier every single time. But a lot of great memories in here about volunteering at camp. Corey just jumped on here. She said she's late. That's okay. But she, my last camp was in October 2009 when I was 5 months pregnant with my son. You know what that's like.
I believe I was at that camp.
Yeah. I had never lost someone close to me before volunteering camp, but since then I lost my dad in December of 2018. I need to come back ASAP. My favorite part of camp is watching the transition of campers from Friday to Sunday. And it's that turbo bonding. It's magical. And it's something that we, happened back then, and it continues to happen every single day with all of our camp programs.
Yes, thank you for that, Corey.
Thank you. Yeah. Lynn, thank you for joining, and thank you for coming on here and talking about this and giving the backstory and the perspective of how Comfort Zone got involved and how we are still up north. Is there anything you want to finish up with saying to everybody?
Oh, I'm really grateful. I mean, it was when I pitched the idea that we were going, there was never from our board at the time or our volunteer base or any, it was like, we're there. And there was just no looking back. And I'm so proud when I look back, there's a lot of different tragedies and things that happen. And you're like, oh, I wish I could do something. And I'm so proud that we did.
Yeah.
And we didn't just do it once. We were one of the most frequent and consistent responders.
Yes.
And, just so proud. I'm proud. And we had we did all that at no cost. And we had a lot of amazing donors. A Little Hope was one of our first 9/11 donors, and they are still sponsoring us today. They're amazing. Discover Card was another really big sponsor. And then even the small, donations, $5, $10, $20. I mean, it was just amazing, the outpouring of funds that came in and the outpouring of people giving up their time. And so it's humbling to look back. And the best thing is that we still have those relationships with so many kids today. And that, the Katie symbolizes that so many of them, they're doing okay. They're happy, productive adults, despite this unfair thing that happened to them. It didn't stop them. And if Comfort Zone was some small piece of that, how lucky are we? We're so lucky.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us here today. Lynn mentioned A Little Hope, who was there with us at the beginning and helping us fund. We do have a camp coming up in partnership with A Little Hope. It is a suicide loss specific camp, and the information is on our website. And that's going to be one of our Comfort Zone at Home programs, so a virtual camp program, in this new world that we've adapted to.
We're doing virtual camps. We have not stopped doing camps. We've done over 10 virtual programs. We're evaluating when we can come back in person. And we're, so keep checking our calendar. We will continue to do programming and Comfort Zone. We're in it for the long haul. We have the next generations. We have the Katies and a lot of these campers turn volunteer, helping us pay it forward for the next generation. So let's do more. There's more kids out there that need our help after a loss.
Thank you so much for joining us. Like Lynn said, check out the website for upcoming calendar programs, camp programs, our virtual 5K coming up.
Right, the virtual 5K, it's a national 5K. Join us.
National. So we thank you for being here. Take some time today to take care of yourself. And this day that we're all remembering, and come back again. We'll go live again soon, I'm sure.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.